the City of Warrenville Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the Whole regular meeting. It's Monday, June 11th, 2018, and we're going to have a roll call, please.
Alderman Ashour.
Here.
Alderman Berry.
Here.
Alderman Vivier.
Here.
Alderman Davalos.
Here.
Alderman Goodman.
Here.
Alderman Hoffman.
Here.
Alderman Widener.
Here.
Alderman Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. And now if we'd all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I forgot to mention that the mayor is not here tonight. He's taking a day off. Okay, citizens' comments. I don't have anyone that has signed up for citizens' comments, but anyone in the audience is welcome to let us know if you have a comment to make on anything that's listed in the business of the meeting. For official and staff comments, clerk? Nothing, thank you. Okay. City administrator?
I don't have anything. You have a staff person.
Staff?
Assistant's going to make a comment about Channel 10.
Assistant City Administrator Christina White.
Thank you. I did just want to announce to everybody that this meeting is being live transmitted to Channel 10. Some of the slides on Channel 10 are back up and running. We will be, over the next couple of weeks, replacing and recreating some of the slides that were lost with the server that went down. And we will be reaching out to some of the other taxing districts and groups that have slides typically on Channel 10 and asking them to resubmit those slides. But this meeting is being live broadcast. The only remaining glitch that we have is with the replay sound that we are working out with the vendor and the engineers from the server company. So with the replays, there's not sound, so we are not going to be replaying the videos for right now on Channel 10, but they will be replayed on YouTube going forward until that gets resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman? No one has their hand raised. Okay. Now we go on. I'm getting a little feedback here. On to the business of the meeting. We're going to have number one, an informal presentation of city water system. This is by Deputy Public Works Director Phil Kukler. No. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Christine, Senior Engineer Christine Hocken. Christina.
Thank you.
I don't know. It's doing
that. Last year, the city contracted with EEI to perform the Phase 3 analysis of the Southwest District Capacity Analysis. This included a analysis of the city's complete water distribution system. The reason for this was to evaluate proper sizing of the water mains for proposed developments as well as future city projects to replace the water main system as the system ages. EEI will be here to make a presentation on the results of their analysis. So with that, I would like to welcome EEI to the podium.
Can everybody hear me? Everybody can hear me? So, as Christine alluded to, we were doing a study of the Southwest District. Previously, we had done a study to really examine what happened or what the needs were for the Southwest District. Part of the focus of this study is to see the impact on the existing system to make sure we're maintaining things there. Sorry, I'm trying to click. So the goals, we'll just review the goals, background, examine what we evaluated with the waterworks system, go through recommendations, and then take any questions and answers that you might have. Is there a... Thank you. So from a waterworks system perspective, as I mentioned, we're really focused on any impacts to the existing system that the Southwest District might have. In addition to that, there's an existing ground storage tank that we wanted to examine to see if that's something that could be removed for the system, and so we evaluated that. And then the last item is we were given 2 locations of potential elevated water storage tank, water treatment plant, well site, and to review hydraulically if they fit in. From the sanitary sewer perspective, we did some analysis, but once again, we wanted to make sure you had downstream capacity within the Warrenville system. We're not looking further into the Naperville system, just focusing on the immediate needs downstream. So just a little bit of background. The city currently has about 13,400 people, and the impact between the additional Cantera, the Southwest District, and remaining infill within the city equals about another 7,800 PE. And I say PE because that's the demands of one population, but that includes your commercial and industrial and everything else going into that. Something to keep in mind is land use has changed and will continue to change over time. So this is one moment in time that we're looking for, so it needs to be evaluated as things do change. From the water main perspective, or from the waterworks system perspective, there's about 71 miles of main, 5 wells, 4 water treatment plants, and 3 tanks, 3 elevated tanks and 1 ground storage tank. So when we evaluated, our real focus for tonight is just looking at the waterworks system evaluation. So when we think of, do we have enough capacity, we look at the distribution main sizing. We look at, do we have enough water storage, and do we have enough water supply? So that's what we're evaluating tonight. So from the water distribution system and the water mains, and we start looking at pressures. There's all different standards, recommendations, etc. But we review pressures, we review the velocities in the pipe, and we review the head loss in the pipe, which is really like your friction factor. And that translates to less flow as you get more friction in your pipe. We base them on AWWA standards and manuals, so we're not just making things up. They're based on actual manuals from the AWWA. Go ahead. Some additional considerations, we look between the water storage tanks and the wells. If a well's down or a tank's down, can you fill the tank from multiple wells? Vice versa, if my tank's down or my one well's down, can I still distribute water? We also look at the redundancy in the supply and storage, and then beyond the domestic available water, you have to be able to provide adequate fire flow. So when we did this evaluation, we did do a model using Bentley software, but there was some lower pressures on the east side that staff was very well aware of. They're still within range, but we did notice that that side is a little bit lower in pressure, and that's due to elevations, nothing else, not because your system's deficient, it's just the elevations within the system. So when we look at the amount of water supply, there's 2 scenarios that we generally look at. Number 1 is the ultimate source capacity, which is really, can I supply my maximum day demand without my largest well in place? Because wells do go down. It's just the nature. You're going to have to rehab them. And then the second scenario is the reliable source capacity, which in the aquifer, if you're pumping out of that aquifer down below the ground continuously, the water draws down and you don't get as much capacity. So you can't plan on running those wells 24/7. You can run them maybe 16 hours a day. So that's what we did here. We looked at that scenario, running the wells 16 hours a day. So as you can see, sometimes you try to equate these out to years, but it really is based on the amount of population you're going to see. And as I said, that population includes your commercial, et cetera. We change everything into the PE. So looking out, the 2,882 PE is what's at the Southwest District. So you're looking in the immediate, you can see as soon as you're at a plus 1,000 PE, you're already below in terms of reliable source capacity. And these facilities, they take a few years to actually design and get underway, et cetera. So you got to start thinking about planning for them now. So if you want to go to the next one. From the storage perspective, we look at three different things. We look at the peak hour storage, which is the ability to provide the peak hour demand in a system for 4 hours. Then we have the fire flow demand, which is the ability to meet your maximum day demand for 3 hours, plus the worst case scenario for a fire flow. And then we look at emergency supply, which is really just your ability to supply about your average day demand. And as we see here, at 2,882, you're starting to go negative, which is your Southwest District. The important thing to note about storage is you usually just have you have at least a 100-year life on that storage tank. So you don't want to go building small tanks because then you have to maintain them. Those costs are significant. So the idea is to build a storage tank that's going to reach all the way to the end, to your ultimate population. So we estimate that you need just under 500,000 gallons is the end result with your ultimate population. So recommendations, we had, from the water main perspective, we looked larger diameter mains in the Southwest District, and just with any good system, looping is key, so continuing to loop water mains as the city can. From a storage perspective, we looked at the ground storage tank, and honestly, the benefit of the ground storage tank is limited by the pumps that are pumping to the system. So the impact of removing this from the system was pretty minimal, and thought from a hydraulic standpoint, it was okay to remove. And once again, that's so you can combine all your facilities and minimize the number of facilities you have to maintain in the long run, which greatly reduces your costs. And then we recommended construction of a 500,000 gallon tank. We estimated the cost of this to be about $2.3 million. I have to say the key there is it does not include any of the off-site improvements. It depends where your site is. And the other key thing is this doesn't include if there's a deep foundation, if there's bad soils or something. And the other thing is if there's wetlands or floodplains, things tend to significantly increase as well. So this is a basic site that's typical, and there's outside parameters that it can occur if that's not the case. From a supply perspective, long-term, we looked at adding iron filtration to well number 8, an existing well, and then we said drill an additional well and provide treatment for that as well. And the estimated cost for those combined was $3.1 million. And then determining the optimal municipal water facility, it's fairly flat along within this area, so you do have a lot of flexibility where that municipal site can go. The few sites we looked at, we were okay, and if that has to be refined, we'll refine it, but I think in general, you're pretty good within that area. From a sanitary sewer collection system, this is stuff you've been very proactive on and are already doing, implementing the I&I reduction plan. Right now, we're doing the West 3, you guys are doing the West 3 basin, so you're moving forward with that. Construct a sanitary sewer network per the plan. Nothing changed with the plan from the original study. And then coordinate with Naperville regarding any permitting. So those are all moving forward. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Questions? Alderman Bevere?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. And I just wanted to throw out there that all this stuff that's going on right now, will actually reduce our ISO rating and help out on everything. So they look a lot for the hydraulic study on all your water systems and stuff like that. And if the fire department probably could have got down to a 1 if this would have been in place. We're that close in points, so yeah,
Excellent.
great to see. I'd love to see this going on. Thank you.
Excellent.
Alderman Widener?
Yeah, just curious as far as the sustainability of the aquifer that we're drawing from. I know there was, some concern with many years ago with so many communities on, not on Lake Michigan water, that the aquifer was being reduced. And I just wonder what its present state and evaluation is, if you know anything about that.
Sure. I have to say, my colleague Jeff Freeman, who's here, that I should have introduced at the beginning, is probably better served to respond to this, but I can say many of your surrounding communities they are on Lake Michigan water, which benefits you, and I don't know if you would like to add anything to that.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to address you. So I'm Jeff Freeman with EEI. And in talking with the Illinois State Water Survey, who monitors sustainability of groundwater systems, actually surface water as well, throughout the state, they've indicated the limestone, which is what your wells are in this area, is productive and looks good from a sustainability perspective. Now, the one thing we will say, which is something to be talked about with well 13, is there's never a guarantee that you'll always get the production that you want in a particular location, because the limestone, you're depending on intercepting fractures in the formation to be able to get the water to that formation. But through this general area, it is highly fractured, therefore the water can move throughout the area, and ultimately the recharge is good and it looks good for the foreseeable future.
Are recharge areas a significant distance away from the wells themselves?
They can be. We didn't look at that as part of this study. Typically, with shallower aquifers, it can be, thousands of feet. In this instance, usually you have the sand and gravel that sits on top of the limestone, which will have a smaller geographical area, and the limestone, because it can take in water from the sand and gravel, but as well as water that's getting in and traveling through those fractures, it can be even further. Probably something to consider in the future as a plan, just to further evaluate that. That obviously would be a cost, but the State Water Survey and State Geological Survey have built models to help evaluate that long term.
Just one further question. What's the depth that we're drawing from?
Depth into the limestone is a couple hundred feet, if I recall. To get down, again, you're going through, topsoil, clay, sand and gravel typically in some areas, and then your first bedrock formation in this area is in fact the Silurian limestone, which is the formation that you withdraw from.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alderman Wilson?
Yeah, my only question was, looking at this elevated water storage tank, were you able to kind of locate where that might have to go or where it would go in the Southwest District?
I will somewhat defer to staff here. From an elevation perspective, we looked at several different locations, and you have flexibility because it's fairly flat in the Southwest District. So as long as we're putting our larger diameter water main there, and you have, you're able to access that larger diameter water main, you have that flexibility. So I think staff's kind of looking at possibilities for that.
But we do have possibilities. I guess my question is
Yes.
this. Okay, thank
Phil, did you have something to a comment?
Yeah, we don't know where it's going to go exactly yet, but generally somewhere in the neighborhood like Duke Parkway. And we're looking at parcels we could potentially purchase there. We had looked at the wetland, the property of the wetland and floodplain out of the city that was donated to the city by the Tortorello family, and that there are many challenges with that would make that area really expensive to build a water a well and a elevated storage tank on. So we're looking at other options that we'd need to purchase.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. I just want to kind of confirm the time frame that does this need to start occurring right away because the development's occurring right away out there, or
That's our recommendation.
that's the recommendation?
Yes, because nothing's going to be online for at least another year and a half, 2 years minimum, and that's just for one, and it depends on how big the site is, whether you can construct them together or not. So it's important to move forward with this.
Okay. My other question, I don't know which of you could answer it. It's kind of a strange question, and it could be an urban myth, but I've always been told that Warrenville is on its own aquifer since I moved here 30 years ago, making us some sort of special place. So I never had a chance to ask anybody, is that true or not? Can you be on your own aquifer, or kind of aren't we all a little bit connected under that limestone?
Yes,
Okay.
you are all connected. It's a shallow aquifer if you want to expand.
Probably what they mean, at least, although 30 years ago that wouldn't have been the case. In Northeast Illinois, there's not a ton of communities that can get sufficient water out of the limestone to be productive enough for a municipality. For instance, when you go into Kane County, just a little bit to the west, the limestone is not productive. Residential wells can go into the limestone, which might get 10 or 20 gallons per minute, but you guys are getting 500 gallons per minute plus. So the geology is such that in the Warrenville area, portions of Naperville, and I think even just a little bit beyond that, there you can tap into the limestone, but because again, it's not productive in other areas, you're somewhat on your own aquifer. Water is flowing through, just not near as efficient through King County and into DuPage. There are areas south of the city where the limestone is highly productive as well, but that would be totally separate, not hydraulically connected to your area.
Thank you.
Alderman Goodman?
I had one question when I was looking at the map that you had up there about the waterworks system evaluation. It had the city borders in it, and I know quite a few of our water systems extend beyond our city borders. We have the Forest Preserve water extension that was just built, and of course we've been supplying water to Fermilab for many years. So was all of that part of your evaluation as well, even though it's not on the map?
Yes, it was. We included all that in the evaluation, and it's accounted for.
Okay, so they have, similar models showing what the water pressure is in those areas, and that we're going to not, cut anybody off if we...
Correct. I can't say that they have models themselves, but I can tell you that we have it in our model to make sure we're continuing to supply what you've been supplying to them.
Okay, and generally speaking, the water that other non-Warrenville residences might include the unincorporated areas, the island. Some people might want to join on city water in the island, but that's a small enough area that we did or did not consider that in this.
Some general infill of the city was included, and staff put those projections together. So that's what that total approximately 7,800 PE accounted for that.
Okay, and that's not just people within the city limits.
That's correct. It took care of people that might annex the city in the future and might connect onto the city's water system as well. That are outside the city right now.
Okay, great. I mean, I had full confidence in you, but good to check these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you. That was the for informational purposes only. Okay. And now we're on to number 2, consideration of engineering proposal for design of the new Southwest District well, elevated water storage tank, and iron removal facility. Senior civil engineer Christine Hocking will present.
Thank you. As you all heard, EEI's analysis and recommendation of the waterworks system is to build a new well, 500,000 gallon elevated water storage tank, and an iron removal water treatment facility. Also, as you heard, no site has been chosen yet. So the contract that has been presented to you all is for a general site for the design of each 3 of those items. In consideration with this site, and the city staff and the engineer we will also be considering solar within the site. I know that is important to various city council members, so we will be analyzing to see if solar can produce enough electricity, or at least some, to run the well and the well site. Staff requested a proposal from EEI. They obviously prepared the Southwest District capacity analysis and the city's system-wide water system analysis for the city, and their prior and intimate knowledge of the projects and various elements are something that we considered when we were reaching out to consultants. The cost of their proposal is $299,725, which is more than what is budgeted into FY19. However, the engineering project will take more than a year to complete, so the $250,000 that's budgeted in FY19 will be spent in FY19, and the remainder of the contract will be completed in budgeted in FY20. The staff recommends City Council pass the resolution to approve this contract with EEI for the design of well 13, the iron removal, and the water tower. The city and the city's attorney are drafting currently contract engineering documents that will be negotiated with EEI for contract terms. In the past, we've been using a general, we call it a short form, but this type of engineering contract requires a longer form version according to the city attorney. So they've drafted that, and we will be presenting it to EEI, and we'll be negotiating with them. That contract will be included in the city council agenda and backup information at the next one.
Okay. Good. Questions? Alderman Ashour?
Maybe the administrator would know this. Is this eligible for TIF reimbursement? Is this considered a TIF project because it's Southwest District?
Okay. City Administrator?
Thank you. I'm following the order here.
Thank you.
Waiting for the chair. It legally would be TIF reimbursable because it's being designed and would be constructed to directly serve that TIF district area primarily, so yes.
Alderman Davalos?
So, just to dovetail off of the last presentation, the amount for this whole project could change depending on the location that we're picking. Right now, we're just kind of doing the engineering contract to do the whole thing, so we don't really have to know where it's going to be. But in the end,
the construction will be based upon, the construction costs will be based upon where obviously
where
the
it's
site is
located.
located.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Alderman Ashour?
Just kind of a silly little comment, but in hotels, they skip the 13th floor. Are we going to skip the 13th well and make it go right to 14?
Guess that's up to you guys.
I guess that's something we'll have to look into. Alderman Goodman?
I would like to make a motion to recommend the City Council pass a resolution approving the proposal with EEI for engineering design of well 13, iron removal facility, and water tower in an amount of $299,725.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Bevere. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Let's see what we have here. 3. On to number 3, a consideration of plat of easement vacation. Again, senior engineer Christine Hocking.
Thank you very much. This plat of easement vacation is related to two utility easements located on, one's located on the city-owned property east of Barclay Avenue, as well as on the Stalen properties north of Duke Parkway, south of SD Street. The Stalen properties are also the area where Thornton's is proposing to develop their gas station. Currently, a 20-foot utility easement bisects the Stalen properties as well as runs along the south edges of the properties as well as the city property. They are empty easements, utility easements for all of the utilities, Nicor, ComEd, including City of Warrenville Utilities, and Bluestone, who's working with Thornton's to develop the property, asked us to present this plat of vacation to essentially it would clean up the property, make it easier down the line to develop it, and it also, from the city's perspective, would remove any complications with the existing city's sanitary sewer easement that exists on the south side of the property. That was not vacated when we created that utility easement for the sanitary sewer. It should have been at that time, but while we were reviewing the Thornton's proposal, we realized that there's one on top of the other, and it's a city's exclusive sanitary sewer easement, so we would not want any of the other utility companies to put their lines in within our easement. So it's more cleaning up the area for that.
Okay, any questions? Alderman Goodman?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council pass an ordinance approving the plat of vacation.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Vivier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Number 4, a consideration of city code amendments for road design requirements. Deputy Public Works Director Kukler.
Thank you. The materials listed in the city road design requirements in the city code are based on IDOT specifications. And the changes that are proposed in the ordinance included in tonight's agenda are to make the city code consistent with the current IDOT specifications. It's more of a housekeeping item than anything else. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item at this time.
Questions? Alderman Goodman?
Yes, there are references in this to the Public Works Director. Is that intentional, or should it say the Deputy Public Works Director? I mean, we do have a Public Works Director, which is John, but is that the intent here?
I think it's keeping the code, I think the references in the code to the Public Works Director consistently, and I think it's just being consistent with the rest of the code. Typically, John will defer or look for guidance from me anyway, so it ends up being me that's making the decision, but to be consistent with other references in the code, I think we've left it as Public Works Director.
Okay, because it replaced the city engineer, and we do also have a city engineer,
Right.
so that
I think it's a
isn't
decision.
preferable?
I'm sorry. It's decisions probably better made by Public Works. Ultimately, we're the ones who own and maintain the roads and the various improvements in the city. So I think the ultimate Public Works should have the say in that.
Okay.
Alderman Hoffman?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what's the requirement of a driveway as far as the thickness of asphalt?
I think the code is at 2 inches over 8 inches of stone, 2 inches of asphalt over 8 inches of stone.
Yeah, I was just amazed when they were grinding the Main Street there. There could have been 2 inches of asphalt there.
Yeah, there's a lot of streets we've come across where there's a really thin layer of asphalt on top. We're trying to address those as we come across them, but
Like 2 inches over the top of gravel.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Alderman Goodman?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the City Council pass an ordinance amending the city code regarding construction materials for streets and public ways.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Vivier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. On to number 5. Consideration to waive competitive bidding requirements for replacement of well number 12 filter control panel. Again, Deputy Public Works Director Kukler.
thank you. Last year, city staff began upgrading the filter control panels at our city wells, and I think that started with well 10 last year, and we're on to well 12 this year. The control panel also includes SCADA equipment for the city's water system, and Metropolitan Pump is the sole provider for the city's SCADA equipment, both with the water and the sewer system. You may recall 2 years ago, we switched from the radio transmitting to the cellular signal through Metropolitan Pump and utilizing Verizon's system. Staff reviewed the scope and the cost of the work, and we find them acceptable, and we're recommending waiving competitive bidding and awarding the contract to Metropolitan Pump. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Alderman Goodman?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council waive competitive bidding requirements and authorize City Administrator Coakley to execute the Metropolitan Pump quotation for well number 12 in the amount of $22,686.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Bevere. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moving right along. Number 6, consideration of Amber Lane sanitary sewer service request. Deputy Public Works Director Kugler.
Thank you again. City Council awarded a construction and engineering contracts last week to extend sanitary sewer from Landon Avenue to Route 59. The request for the sanitary sewer service near this main extension was received during the bid process, and the Warrenville resident that lives on Amber Lane is looking to replace their septic system because they're having issues with it. And they'd prefer to spend money hooking up to a city sanitary sewer as opposed to replacing their septic system. The best way to serve these properties is actually through this project and off of this extension rather than having them run their services from their house all the way up to Amber Lane, which is quite a distance, and through somebody else's property. And rather than delay the project, staff decided to proceed with the bid opening and awarding the contract. There's going to be adding this work to the contract's going to require a little bit of time. We're going to have the extension, the short extension designed by an engineer. We're going to have to obtain an IEPA permit. We're going to have to negotiate easements and have a plat drafted for council approval. And then we'll have to get a change order from the contractor, and that's going to take a little bit of time. So rather than trying to incorporate that into the existing contract during the bid process, we wanted to wait until we had a chance to present it to council and get some feedback. We estimate there's going to be about $5,000 worth of engineering and design and plat preparation, and probably about $40,000 of construction costs, but we'll know that better once we talk to the contractor. We will need council approval for the easements once the plat is ready, and depending on the size of the change order, we could need council approval for that as well. At this point, we're looking for direction from City Council to start the engineering design, prepare plats, and work with the property owners on obtaining easements, and then obtaining a proposal for a change order from the contractor. One item I'd like to point out is that, and you may have noticed in the agenda bag of materials, is that part of the easement that would be obtained from Alderman Ashauer, his property backs up to this extension. I just want to bring that to your attention so everybody's aware of it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on this time.
Questions? Alderman Wilson?
I guess my only question is, if these people, this property is then connected to the city, are they going to be charged the connection property or fees in order to tie in?
Yes, they'll be charged the sewer surcharge fee.
Okay, just a normal, but putting it closer so they can do it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Goodman?
How have we dealt with similar requests in the past?
I'm not aware of any similar requests during my time here. This just happens to be, we have a sewer extension going through private property that's going to ultimately be a future subdivision. There's a preliminary plat that's been approved for that. And these people live just to the north of it. So what we did was we took the sewer design from the preliminary engineering and relocated the proposed main that would run kind of parallel to this, but a little bit to the west. We relocated to the east to run along the property line to serve that. And we first checked with the property owner to make sure he'd be okay with that. To be willing to possibly grant us an easement before we brought this forward.
Because it looks on this map, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, as if it's not quite touching their property. There's a little bit. You said theirs is lots C and D, and this seems to connect to E. I don't know. So it looks like we're going to have to be using someone else's land as well.
There'll be an easement a little further to the east on Alderman Ashauer's property to build a stub to their property line. And their house is located kind of in the middle of lots C and D.
Okay, so it wouldn't go through Lot E on this map. It would go.
No, we'd have a stub to Lot E, for that property as well, since we're back there.
Okay. So, if we don't really have any, I guess, precedent in place, and we have standard fees already for people to tap on, then we would just use those fees, even though this is obviously going to be a lot more than.
Well, ultimately, this land will also serve, I think, 2 or 3 lots in the proposed subdivision. So we're going to install it at a depth and with the ability to extend to those 2 or 3 lots by the developer as well. And so as part of any of these extensions through his property, he's going to have to pay to connect to the sewer as well, because it's something he would have had to install had his development come first.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Alderman Ashour?
When the proposed subdivision was talked about, it was the understanding, I think, that he would provide all this, that actually supplying that particular lot with sewer was part of the plan. So this should be part of the recapture agreement from the developer if he starts building on that property. So it's not, it's just taking care of somebody that has a whole bunch of kids and a failing septic that we would probably do when we're putting in sewer otherwise. And I also won't be voting on this because it's requires an easement from me.
Any other questions? Okay, need a motion? Alderman Goodman?
I'll make a motion to direct staff to coordinate the sewer design and easements with the appropriate property owners and request a change order from Pertano Construction regarding this
Second.
project.
Okay, a motion and by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Bevere. And Alderman Ashour will not be voting at this time. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, number 7, consideration of fueling intergovernmental agreement and IGA and resolution with the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County. And now we're going to go to management analyst Justin Miller.
Good evening, Council. I'm bringing forward an updated IGA with the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County. The current agreement allows the city to purchase propane, ethanol, biodiesel, and compressed natural gas from their fueling facility located along Mack Road. The updated IGA before you tonight adds unleaded fuel to that. Currently, for some background, the city utilizes BP and Speedway gas stations in Warrenville to fuel city vehicles. The city would shift fueling operations to the Forest Preserve District facility on Mack Road and use the current system of the fueling stations as a backup in case anything happens. The facility at Mack Road does not have a backup generator, so if power goes out, there would be issues with that. The Forest Preserve District system, their billing system also provides us the opportunity to really gather some really good data electronically through their system. Again, I put a number of fields in the memo of what they would provide to us. Staff also conducted analysis encompassing fuel usage, fuel prices, and potential cost savings from a period a little over a year. It was January 2017 through January 2018. Over that period, the Forest Preserve District fuel prices were on average, the unleaded price was 32 cents cheaper than what the city was paying at BP and Speedway, and 8 cents cheaper on diesel compared to the same thing. So based upon that usage and price over that period of time, we could staff anticipates a savings of about $6,000. Again, if the IGA is approved tonight and goes to full council and is approved, it would then go to it would go for approval before the Board of Commissioners of the Forest Preserve District. And again, staff recommends approval of the updated IGA with the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County, and I'll take any questions.
Questions, Alderman Hoffman?
Yeah, my question is, as far as, it's minimal savings. My question is, how much extra time is caused by, let's say you got a couple guys in a truck over in Canterbury, got to drive way over there to refuel at, I don't know what their sum total of their packages, but you could burn up the, let's say they got a 20-gallon tank, so let's say you're burning up 640 of more than burn that up in wage. I don't see where this thing's really cost savings. But, do you have any idea on what the extra labor is gonna cost?
No, I didn't do those calculations, but there would be interest. So I know for the biodiesel, for example, we only buy at Speedway. So I would assume there would be cost savings with, again, like anything else, I guess it fluctuates. The prices in gas, I know they're under contract and they get pretty good prices. So I can see where.
Yeah, the whole thing is we're adding a lot of valuable staff time running to get fuel someplace, and we're basically taking the business away from our local businesses here for, I doubt if there's any savings at all. There's probably actually a cost. I'll be voting no on this. Thank you.
City Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. The answer to that question is going to depend a lot on what projects are going on, where they're located. If they're doing snow plowing, water main breaks, there are different parts of town. Whether you're at one of the speedways or BP would make the difference. As for the squad cars, which use a lot of our gasoline fuel, they're all over the town. They use Mack Road frequently, so having them stop there instead of one of the stations, I think would be almost immaterial difference. For the bigger vehicles, diesel would probably be the one that would have any bearing there. I'm guessing it's probably a mile or a mile and a half further each direction. The amount of staff time is probably pretty minimal as well. We frankly probably spend more time going out of town for parts and equipment than we would for fueling at that station. It's not just the dollar savings and the ability not to have to, we don't have our own fuel tanks now for about 20-some years, thankfully. The lack of having any data on our vehicles really hinders us from being able to keep track of the mileage on the vehicles, which is essential for planning the preventative maintenance. Right now, it's all done virtually within each department, so the police personnel, and then the few vehicles in City Hall need to keep track of that themselves. It's done better in some parts than in others. That's a real essential piece of getting towards some of the items you'll see later in the agenda on the report on the Public Works study from 2 years ago, is building that database, having that data. Short of having our own fueling stations, we cannot get that in any reasonable way or really at all from the private facilities. Those worked very well for us. They'll continue to work as backup or when there's a need. Our recommendation is based on the fact that there's a savings and there's another benefit in just having that data. I'm not really sure without data about where all of our trucks are, how long and when. As part of building up our work order system and all, I don't think we have the data to do the analysis that you're asking. It would all just be a rough estimate of distances and mileage, but until you have data about where the assignments are for the Public Works employees, you can't calculate how much further it would be for each project. That's all the systems that we're just starting to build.
Alderman Wilson.
Just a couple of picky little questions here. The cost was 32 cents per gallon, but then you have an additional cost, it says 2 cents per gallon for unleaded and a 15-cent fee for a billing cycle, and then the cost of purchasing chip keys. Now, that's all taken out of the $6,000 that we're saving. And the other question is, do we pay, when we fill up at BP or Safeway or wherever, do we pay the city tax on that? So we're not when we fill up a city vehicle, we're paying the price on the pump? Or do we not pay the tax we collect on the gas that other people buy? Does that make sense? Just a question. I know it doesn't come anywhere near $6,000, so we're still saving money, and it's a good program.
City Administrator Coakley.
Sorry, I want to make sure I don't step on anybody's toes with the answer. The city has accounts, so each vehicle, has a card and an account number. So either Speedway or BP, no, they do not charge us the taxes that would be charged to you and I as citizens just going and paying. We don't pay the federal estate taxes, the local city taxes. We pay the tax rate. Jeez, there's a word for that. Anyway, we don't pay those taxes, so that's not considered in the savings. There's just some markup a commercial business would do to administer that and to provide that. That's how they
as you know, that's how they make their money.
Okay, Justin?
My analysis did include the 2-cent surcharge and that $6,000 savings. And as for the $15 billing cycle, we're actually charged a monthly fee for both Speedway and BP. It's in that range. I'm not sure exactly how much it is. And again, the purchasing of the chip keys, it was $7, I believe, in $5 to $7 in the 2007 range. I know when I talked to the Forest Preserve District, that has gotten much cheaper. They buy in bulk now. I think they quoted me, it was significantly lower than that, so we could expect it to be cheaper than that for the chips for each car.
Okay,
Thank
that
you.
sounds good to me. So therefore, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council approve the revised intergovernmental agreement with the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Wilson and a second by Alderman Bevere. Alderman Goodman.
Yeah, one more picky little question from me. Do we still co-own a vehicle with the fire department? Because co-own a vehicle with the fire department, I think for Jamie Clark, because this says that the fuels should be used exclusively for city operations, but I just wondered if that maybe needs to be changed a little bit, or if it counts for city operations, if he's on fire department business.
We can ask the city attorney about that if we need to modify the language slightly to account for that.
Thank you.
There was another question? Alderman Widener?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, it seems like we have a wider selection of fuel offerings at the Forest Preserve than we would have with our current vendors, Speedway and BP. Will that offer up options for the city of Warrenville to purchase different fuel-saving vehicles in the future as part of that, as we look at this intergovernmental agreement? I mean, the compressed natural gas and things like that, there's vehicles that operate off of that. At some point, it might be something that we would consider, correct?
Deputy Public Works Director Kugler?
Yes, we can look at that as we consider vehicle purchases moving forward. There are certain vehicles that might make sense for and others that it wouldn't. I mean, if you look at the CNG conversion that was done on the building inspector's vehicle, it took up a significant part of the bed of the pickup truck to be able to do that, and I'm not sure that would be efficient use of a public works vehicle, but we can look at other options as we move forward.
I just think that there, could be, environmental impacts in the future by forming this intergovernmental agreement with the Forest Preserve, plus the advantages of the additional data. And also, it looks like even billing is quarterly versus monthly, was a time-saving opportunity for the city. So, thanks.
Okay, again, we had motion by Alderman Wilson and a second by Alderman Vivier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, number 8, consideration to endorse city snow removal purchases. Management analyst Justin Miller.
Good evening again, Council. During the 2017-2018 weather season, the city received questions via various communication channels about snow and ice removal procedures. Previously, the city had established internal procedures for snow and ice removal that were not available to the public. Staff has created procedures to help better communicate how the city prioritizes and responds to winter weather events. Again, in order of prioritization on the list, snow and ice are cleared from 1, primary streets first, 2nd, side streets, 3rd, cul-de-sacs, and 4th, school crossings near schools. The procedures documents provide additional context to the public about other procedures, including how public works crews respond to events and contact information for roadways not under the jurisdiction of the city of Warrenville, among other things included in that document. And with that, I'll take any additional questions.
Alderman Weidner?
I have no disagreement with what you're presenting. I was just wondering with the use of the amount of salt and the negative effects salt has, whether we have the latest and greatest high-tech equipment to spread salt the most efficiently that we can, especially near water courses and in areas that are sensitive to salt.
Deputy Public Works Director Kugler?
The equipment we have, I think, is sufficient to control the salt we disperse. I think I forget how long ago, I think we looked at how we utilize salt and we reduced the amount of salt that we use. I mean, aside from the positive environmental impacts you realize by reducing salt usage, it's also financially beneficial for the city to reduce the amount of salt we use, because it does cost, I think, this year's contract is like $60-something a ton. I think we typically use somewhere in the neighborhood like 1,300 tons a year. So it adds up pretty quick. So we do, and as we replace those vehicles, we do consider the equipment that we're adding to them to make sure it's up to date.
Yes.
Is there a formula that's working with a pre-application? I know some communities have been experimenting with beet juice and pickle juice and things like that, and mixing that into the additives before the snowstorm arrives. I just wonder if we've, experimented or had any results that have been tabulated from other communities using the...
No, we don't use beet juice or anything like that, but we do wet the salt before it goes down. We don't spray the roads. If you notice, like the county, or especially around curves and areas that might be more prone to icing, they'll spray before storms and that. We don't do that. We haven't really seen a need to do that, I guess, over the years.
Thank you.
Alderman Goodman?
I'll make a motion to recommend that the city council endorse the city snow removal procedures.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Mavir. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Again, motion passes. Okay, moving right along here. Consideration of a request to dispose of surplus city property. Management Analyst Justin Miller.
Good evening, Council. Again, Public Works has identified a number of items that are no longer utilized or have been replaced. The list of items for disposal is included with your packet. Public Works would again utilize the services of Obanoff Auction Services. The city would receive 94% of the auction property value, while 6% would go to Obanoff as a service fee. I also just wanted to point out that there are spike strips, which we cannot sell. I did check with the police department on that. And also there are some Army stretchers from EMA, Emergency Management, that are just broken. So those would be disposed of and scrapped and not sold at the auction. So I just wanted to clarify that. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay. Alderman Ashour?
It's said that the stretchers are World War II era. Is there any chance that donating them to Cantini, they may use them in their displays or on their display vehicles or something like that if they're actually that old?
From talking with EMA, he made it sound like the EMA director, they were in pieces, they're in really bad shape. I can definitely ask him, but I think he said that they were in pretty rough shape.
It's worth the question.
Good, if you can look into that, that would be great. You never know, they might have someone handy there that can reconstruct. Okay. Alderman Goodman?
I would like to make a motion to recommend the city council approve an ordinance authorizing disposal of city-owned surplus property utilizing Obanoff Auction Services.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Goodman and second by Alderman Bevere. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, we have just some informational update on the Public Works Department work plan. That's informational only. Are there any questions for the director? Okay, seeing none. Next is number 11, the informational update on Public Works Department decision packages. Questions? See none. Okay. And also, number 12, an informational update on Public Works service levels and staffing study. Getting off easy here. All right. We have, that's the end of the business items on the agenda. Next, there's nothing under miscellaneous, there's nothing under closed session. Alderman Goodman?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.